who I am and what I'm truly made of, and that none of that has to do with anything superficial. Like it's what you have to dig deep inside, because no one can do that for you. That is so powerful. And that is something that I actually really, really cherish. And I know that I'm really lucky to have, because not everybody goes through something as severe. And so therefore they don't have that opportunity to go through that much growth.
It's true that Sarah Foley's story, and that of many of the other women with similar experiences, is one of growth. But throughout the entire journey, there was something hidden underneath, a secret, disturbing emotion that even she could not face fully. It was blame. This entire time since the accident, she had held Sean responsible for what happened, and it was time to forgive.
So as I'm kind of walking out of UPW, I'd made a good friends with Mario, and Mario says, okay, what's your next action step? And before the words even came out of my mouth, I said, I'm going to go home and I'm going to forgive my husband. I hadn't realized until UPW how I'd been holding my husband responsible for the accident. And I'd always said I hadn't, and I knew he felt responsible, but I knew it was an accident. I knew he tried to keep me safe, but in actuality, I'd held him really responsible. And I was finally honest with myself about that. And as I was talking to my husband the next day, and I'm just kind of like sitting him next to him on the couch and holding his hand, and I just turned to him and I said, I just need to apologize. I am so sorry for the way I've treated you. And I fully, fully forgive you. And he says, oh, that's okay. I was like, I know you don't hold me responsible. I said, no, I do. I did. I'm sorry. And I forgive you. And I held him and I gave him a hug, and I could tell he's just kind of not feeling it. And I can remember what my girl Nyla taught me about holding it in my heart, and I could still feel it in there. And I just pressed my heart to his as I held him. And I just said, I forgive you, over and over and over. And I just kept squeezing him harder and harder. And finally there was that 2 millimeter shift, and he just broke down and he just started sobbing, and I started sobbing. And he says, you have no idea how much I needed to hear that. We just had this moment of release and forgiving him, and then turning him aside and forgiving myself. It was such a powerful moment of what is possible and the things that are necessary we have to go through. We really have to go through the acceptance and the forgiveness of the moment, and loving everything about the moment for what it held. And I said, it had to happen. My husband's like, no, it didn't. It didn't have to happen. I said, actually, it did. That accident had to happen. And my life is greater because of it. It was just such a powerful moment of forgiveness, possibility, of healing. It's something that absolutely changed my life. It changed the relationship I have with him. There's a release there of a resentment and an anger that I had held, that I really had denied for so long.
You're listening to the Force for Good season of the Tony Robbins podcast. To learn more about the 10 gifts that we're featuring this holiday season, including emotion, drive, growth, joy, gratitude, connection, consciousness, grace, presence, and forgiveness, please visit www.tonyrobbins.com/gifts, GIFTS. And to find Tony Robbins products and events that can help you identify your gifts, go to tonyrobbins.com/shop, SHOP. Sarah Foley's accident and her husband's involvement in it is a pretty clear example of how one person can feel guilty and the other can blame. It was a single moment that both of them remember vividly, and the consequences of that event, her being confined to a wheelchair for the rest of her life, are also clear for everyone. But not all feelings of blame and guilt are that obvious. We're going to hear from Dimple Tharkar, a woman who harbored resentment for years, all against her partner, and she never really knew it. Her story, their story, begins in Bolton, a small town in the northwest of England.
My parents were refugees in Africa, and Mum came across with me 7 months pregnant. So it was quite a tough time for them, kind of finding their feet, and Dad setting up his business, and Mum not being able to speak any English, so she was looking for a job. So I have a lot of respect for my parents because that was tough. Dad was a very proud man, wouldn't let mum or anybody take any benefits or anything like that. He's like, I feed my family, I go out to work, and I make sure that the food that they eat is paid from my work, not from the government. And so really strong work ethic. So I'm one of 3 girls, I'm the middle girl. And Dad was really ahead of his time. He wanted his girls to be educated so that they would be independent financially. His belief was that if they were educated, they could support themselves, irrespective of whether they had a man or not. So that was a great upbringing. And my best friend is my husband today. He was there the day I was born. He's 6 years older than me. His family and my family supported each other as refugees. Mum came across with my older sister, and Dad came across 3 weeks later. She didn't know whether she'd see her husband or not. And in that time, my father-in-law now said to my mum, I will be your brother, I'll be your family here, and took care of Mum. My father-in-law is a phenomenal man. He's just, wow, just incredible. And he basically looked after Mum. It was an abusive relationship. My mum's and Dad's relationship was not pleasant, and my father-in-law kept her safe and provided a safe home for her and a safe haven. So that's how I built my relationship with my husband. We were best friends. We were raised very close, very connected. He's always protected me.
So Dimple and Atul grew up as best friends. But about the time when she was 17 and he was 23, their relationship started to change. Even though her father was more progressive in his views, like insisting that his daughters be educated and independent, she still had a very traditional Indian upbringing. She was not allowed to date, and no boys were allowed in the house.
Atul was allowed in the house because he was raised almost like a brother. And so he had privileges that no other boy would have. And I was 17, he was 23, and he was in my room and we were just chatting and he just kissed me. I still remember it now. It was the sort of kiss that my knees went, I had to sit down, and life was just different after that. We kept that secret for a while, and then my dad found out literally the week before my graduation ball and kicked Atul out of the house and basically didn't